Let's kick off hour number 2 as promised by going on to our guest live. If you happen to be watching us at QSportsTalk.com, you see our next guest live and in person, the voice of the North Carolina Tar Heels, Jones Angell. And Jones, I know you probably caught a snippet of what we've been dealing with here, for the last 5 minutes or so. The sky is clearly falling in Syracuse. North Carolina is 2-5 in their last 7. Is the sky falling down in Chapel Hill?
Well, hopefully not. I do think there are probably some folks who feel that way, and great to be with you guys. As always, appreciate you having me on. It's been a rough stretch for Carolina. This whole season's been inconsistent, I think would probably be the best word to use for the Tar Heels this year, and it's been frustrating. Carolina's sitting here at 14-11. They're 7-6 in conference play, and for some places that's probably okay, but that's not where the Tar Heels expect to be. And they've had so many close games, guys. 10 games, a school record, decided by one possession. They're 6-4 in those 10 games, but they've let some great opportunities slip away. And so they're sitting here where if the NCAA tournament was today, I don't think Carolina would make it. That's an unusual spot for the Tar Heels to be in. And, they're looking for some more consistent play here down the stretch of the regular season to try to put themselves in position to be able to compete in the postseason as well.
Before we get into the X's and O's of this game, I want to talk bigger picture for North Carolina. Syracuse has a GM, and everybody thinks it's an excuse that they are using for this year's roster. What made North Carolina just recently decide that, hey, we need a GM for this program?
Yeah, that happened on our radio show a couple of weeks ago when we got a question about that, and Coach Davis answered live and in the moment. I don't think it's something that has just popped into their mind like today or a week ago or whatever. This is something that has been discussed for a while for the Tar Heels. And it just comes down to the game is different now. The way you build your roster is different now. It is no longer enough, in my opinion, for a head coach, 3 assistants, and a director of operations or something, and that's all you have on your staff. You see it across our league. You see it across other leagues where you have the guys on the bench, and then you have about 20 guys sitting behind them on the next row that are all members of the staff in some form or fashion. And what you do need to have now, again, in my opinion, is somebody who's one of their jobs is managing that staff. And whether that is, as Carolina football has made this move with Bill Belichick and his GM, Mike Lombardi, whether that is when you're dealing with the quote unquote salary cap of the college level, whether that is trying to see who may or may not be in the portal and would be a good fit for what you're going to need moving forward, whether that is, do you put a value on a specific player? So if he comes to you and says, I want $1 million to play next year, and you say, well, yeah, we have you at about 100,000. And if you don't want that, then we'll see you later. Yeah, I don't know exactly what that role may be here or what it is at other places. But I think all of those things and those type of discussions and those type of decisions, those are reality now in college athletics. And so for a head coach, that's a lot on your plate when you're also trying to coach the team and draw up good inbounds plays and all those different things. And so for Carolina and for Hubert Davis, his desire was to be able to have some more personnel on that staff and have a more collaborative effort as far as that roster construction is concerned.
And along those lines, one of the things that's been talked about a lot here in Syracuse, one of the main reasons for the struggles has been that for the most part, they struck out in the portal. When you look at North Carolina's roster, they're loaded at the guard position, right? Davis and Trimble and Cadeau. Does the same thought apply there, Jones, with the roster construction? Did they strike out a little bit with their front court?
100%. There's no question about that. I think if I was naming Carolina's top 5 players right now, I think all 5 of them would be guards. And that's a difficult construction of your roster. And especially at Carolina, where I think even since Syracuse has been in the league, so the last 10 or 11 years, the Tar Heels, one of Carolina's strength is in the post. And whether that's with, in recent years, Armando Bacot and Kennedy Meeks before that, and Bryce Johnson, we can go on down the line, Tyler Hansbrough and Tyler Zeller and Sean May, and we can keep going. So the Tar Heels don't have that this year. They did not, and that's not to say they don't have some guys who are capable players in the front court, but they don't have an elite player, at least one that has produced at an elite level consistently in the front court right now. And they knew that was going to be one of their top needs with Baycott graduating and moving on after last season, and they just weren't able to hit enough in the portal to make that happen. Also, they had a big get, they felt like, in the portal, and Cade Tyson, a guy who's 6'7" and shot 46.5% from three-point range at Belmont the last season, and an average 15 points a game over 2 years. And Cade, unfortunately for him and unfortunately for the Tar Heels, has just struggled and struggled with taking that step to ACC level competition. And so when you both don't fill some needs that you have in the portal, and then also feel like you did fill a need, but it doesn't work out, at least to this point, the way that you wanted, that's difficult. And you see that with Carolina right now. The Tar Heels at times have started 4 guards this year. And when you start that many perimeter players, no matter how talented they are, and Carolina's got some talented perimeter guys, the level of consistency is just less due to the nature of those positions compared to if your strength is in the post. And so I do think roster construction, if I had to make a list, guys, of 3 or 5 things that have been the biggest challenges for Carolina this year, I think roster construction would probably be number 1.
All right. You mentioned a moment ago that if the NCAA tournament started today, or if today was Selection Sunday, Carolina's probably not in. 14-11 overall, 7-6 in conference play. Now, you look at their schedule coming up. Syracuse, NC State, Virginia, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, and then they close things out with Duke. My guess is they're going to be favored in those next 6, right? And then not so much against Duke. In your mind, what would they have to get done over the course of these last 7 games? Is it enough to just, take care of business against those teams? Not really going to help their resume all that much. It's going to help their win total. But if they go 6-1 down the stretch here, do you think that's enough?
I think it at least keeps them in the conversation. And the reason it keeps them in the conversation is the strength of Carolina's non-conference schedule. I mean, Carolina played as difficult a non-conference schedule as anybody in the country. They played at Kansas. They had Alabama in the ACC SEC Challenge. They played on a neutral floor, Auburn, Michigan State, Florida, UCLA, a good Dayton team. They played in Maui as well. So they played some really stern competition. The issue and why Carolina has gotten to the point where it is they didn't win enough of those games. They beat Dayton and they beat UCLA. And in those other games, they didn't win. And that's despite the fact that they had the lead at the 4-minute timeout in Allen Fieldhouse against Kansas. They had the lead at the 4-minute timeout in a neutral site game against Florida. They missed a layup down 1 with 10 seconds left in Maui against Michigan State. That game eventually went to overtime and they lost. And so they had some opportunities because of the amount of quality games they played. They had some opportunities to really accrue some high-level wins that would have traveled throughout the entire year, but they just couldn't get enough of them. So now you get to this point where you mentioned they're going to play 6 straight games against teams that are currently under 500, but they have no room for error at all. If you lose one of those games, I think it damages you enough that if you're the Tar Heels, you're in a spot where you're going to definitely have to beat Duke. You may have to win the ACC tournament to be able to get in. And so for Carolina, a team that has not won more than 4 consecutive games all season, they're going to need to not have a quote-unquote bad loss in these 6 games that they have leading up to the Duke contest on March 8th to close things out.
Morale of the North Carolina team. We get asked that about Syracuse. RJ Davis is used to winning. How is the morale of the team, and how has Hubert Davis been able to keep these guys going?
It's a great question. I think morale is okay. I think frustration level is high. And when you have guys who are used to winning, and Carolina is a program that is used to doing that, of course, just like Syracuse is. And when you have competitive guys, when it isn't working the way that you want, particularly in a very disappointing fashion from time to time, I think the frustration builds. So I don't think that there is some kind of issue where the Tar Heels are not competing or slumping their shoulders once they get down by 8 in a game or something like that. I don't think that is the case. I do think the Heels are they're pressing a little bit at times, which is causing some mistakes. I mean, they know what situation they're in, and they understand that, again, at Carolina, it's going to be magnified compared to some other places. And so frustration level high, morale okay, but certainly some wins would help both of those things.
All right, as you get set to call this game tomorrow and you look at this Syracuse team, what stands out to you, from the outside looking in about Syracuse? Is there anything about Syracuse in particular that concerns you from a North Carolina perspective?
Well, first and foremost, it's Eddie Lampkin, right? I mean, he's such a powerful player down low. He does such a good job using his body and using his size. I've just been really impressed. Anytime that I've seen Syracuse play, I've been impressed with his play. He just seems like a really skilled player for his size. His numbers back it up. He's the leading offensive rebounder in the league and top 20 in the nation in that category. What do you have, 23, I think, rebounds in a game earlier this season? So he's a guy that can attack Carolina in an area that has been a challenge for the Tar Heels this year. So I think first and foremost, it's him. J.J. Starling played very well, as did Chris Bell against Carolina last year in the Dome. The Tar Heels ran away with things in the Smith Center, but then Syracuse shot better than 60% for the game in the Dome last year, and those two guys were a big part of that. So I think anytime you have high-quality players that are ACC veterans in a difficult place to play on a Saturday night, you understand that you're going to be walking into a high level of play from those type of guys and a difficult atmosphere. So I think all those things add up. And look, Carolina has no right to walk into anywhere, roll out the ball, and say, all right, boys, the Tar Heels are here. Give us the dub. This team has not proven that it's good enough to do that. So the Tar Heels are going to have to go out there and scrap and fight and earn every bit of this if they can get it.
Last one for you, quick Cliff Notes version of how it's been since Bill Belichick rolled into town down there. Is he how's the fans enjoying it, and is it feel different down there?
Oh, it definitely feels different. There's no question about that. In fact, I was able to sit down with Coach Belichick for about half an hour earlier this week. It's been the first time, just because he's been so busy, that I've had an opportunity to talk with him. And I honestly think, guys, the excitement level for Carolina football and the interest level in Carolina football is as high in the month of February as I can ever remember it. The Tar Heels are going to host TCU on Labor Day to kick off the season. That will be as energetic an environment and as much interest in a Carolina football game that there's been in decades. And so looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing what Coach Belichick can do here at the college level in Chapel Hill.
All right, Jones, great stuff. Enjoy your time in the 315. Thanks so much for coming on, and we look forward to chatting with you again down the road.
Thanks, guys. Always enjoy the time. Look forward to talking with you again soon.
Bring a jacket.
Yes, it is very cold here. It is very cold. All right, we're going to take a timeout here. When we return, we're going to bring in Ryan Abbott. He is back from his trip to Miami. He was the Labatt Blue Flyaway winner. We'll talk with Ryan on the other side. We've got today's business coming up at 1:30. We're back after this on ESPN Radio.